Welcome, Sarah and Basil. Look, let's get your reaction to this move. You would have just heard it here for the very first time. We just revealed that Mike Pezzullo has been told he's going to be stripped of his AO. Sarah Henderson, what do you think about this?
Well, Sharri, good evening, and I have to say I'm quite shocked by what appears to be a partisan political attack on a highly credentialed public servant, someone who has served both sides of politics very well and, of course, as Peter Dutton has made clear, did a very good job when the borders were in chaos under the former government in stopping the boats. One has to wonder whether this is all part of the immigration mess that we are seeing under this government. We know this government is in chaos. Perhaps this is part of just a nasty campaign. It certainly looks that way, Sharri.
Well, Basil, we know that it's a very rare move to actually remove someone's AO. As I said, since the award's inception back in 1960, there's only been around 46 people, or there were 46 as of May 2023, who've had their awards removed, the majority over criminal convictions. I mean, this is nothing. I mean, Mike Pezzullo, a distinguished public servant. What do you think?
Certainly unprecedented and a significant breaking story, and well done, Sharri, on that. So I'm going on the information that you have just presented to the audience, and we've heard from you that in order to be stripped of one of these very high honours, the recipient has to have been proved or established to have brought the order into disrepute. So the question ultimately will be, has Pezzullo done that? Now, we know that the accusation was he failed to protect confidential government information. I think thousands of text messages were considered or looked at, but the breach of code of conduct was only recorded as 14 times from, I think, thousands and thousands of messages. Therefore, and we did hear, no corruption and no criminality. So on that basis alone, with the facts that you have presented tonight, has he brought the order into disrepute? I would think not. And on that basis, I would think it would be a pretty extraordinary act if he were to lose that very high honour. We know people that have won Order of Australia medals of all categories have made indiscretions in later life and haven't been stripped of their medals. Does this qualify? On the evidence you've presented, I don't think it does. Yeah.
So for people just tuning in now, we've just revealed that Mike Pezzullo has been informed in writing that he is going to be stripped of his AO that he was awarded in 2020. He does have an opportunity to respond if he chooses. Ultimately, it comes down to the Governor-General, David Hurley, to actually take that action. But this is the recommendation. Now, let's have a look at some of the other top stories today. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has been criticised for his Trump-style travel ban by none other than the Russian embassy. Now, this story hasn't had a lot of play, but under the proposed changes, the Immigration Minister could actually prevent foreigners and tourists from entering Australia if their home country refuses to accept the return of failed asylum seekers. So the country is expected to be blacklisted. It includes Russia, Iran, Iraq, South Sudan and Zimbabwe. A Russian embassy spokesperson told the Daily Mail today that they're struggling to remember a single occasion where the Australian government expressed concerns about the removal of a Russian national not having a valid reason to remain or asked us for cooperation with such removal. Sarah Henderson, I mean, this is quite unusual. They are quite extreme laws. What do you think?
Well, Sharri, we've been very concerned for many months about the government's gross mismanagement of immigration and our borders. We've seen month after month of botched legislation, of panic responses, and this is another one of those responses. And that's why we want to test this proposed legislation in a proper Senate inquiry. We're not going to cop, and neither should Australians, the way that this government is managing immigration. And I am pleased that there will be a comprehensive Senate inquiry into this bill.
Breaking news this evening that China has scrapped tariffs on Australian wine, putting to an end a 3-year campaign of trade pressure. Basil, look, we were expecting this. There's been hints from the Prime Minister. I mean, he visited a winery. Do you think we're getting the right balance when it comes to relations with China?
Well, certainly for those people that are in the wine industry, we know this is going to be very welcome. We've already seen them celebrate the impending announcement that these tariffs were about to be dropped. So it's important, it's significant for a cross-section of the business community. They will welcome this. Whether it is the absolute laser focus area that the federal government should be concentrating on, I think is debatable. They might argue, well, it's a good start, and if we can improve relations in one area, it might lead to improved relations in other. We know that tonight, as we get ready for Easter, many of our winemakers and grape growers will be celebrating. This will be significant for their business, so on that score alone, it's a positive. You can't argue with that.
Yeah, no question it's a positive, Sarah, but there is also criticism of the Australian government, including from us here on this program, that they have been too silent on Chinese aggression, political interference, its actions in the South China Sea, that, you know, in order to get the relationship back on track, we're effectively silent on anything else that China does.
Well, Sharri, as you know, we have raised a range of concerns in relation to the way the government is managing the relationship with China. I have to say the news today is good news. We have a very important trading relationship with China, but it does reiterate and, of course, suggest very strongly that the coalition's position that we weren't going to be coerced by these economic sanctions, that has played out as being the right decision. And I am pleased to see this decision by China, which is very good for our wine growers, but more importantly, very good for our entire economy in that it builds confidence in our trading relationship.
Now, earlier this week, I revealed on the show how visiting Tel Aviv University officials, including the Tel Aviv University Vice President, was actually locked in a room with pro-Palestinian activists at the University of Sydney. I showed the footage of the security guards standing right outside the room. Liberal Senator Dave Sharma has now sent a letter to the University of Sydney's Vice-Chancellor Mark Scott. As you know, he's the former Managing Director at the ABC. Here's what Dave Sharma said. He says it's highly regrettable and disappointing that international guests were made to feel unwelcome and personally threatened, and that other international guests witnessed such treatment. He's demanded of Mark Scott an explanation. Sarah Henderson, I understand, you know, you're Shadow Education Minister. You're also planning to write a letter to demand answers here.
Sharri, absolutely. I've written to Mark Scott on a number of occasions, raising serious concerns about the safety of Jewish students and also academics. But this is a shocking, shocking incident. I do not understand why the University of Sydney did not intervene. The fact that these academics appeared, based on your report, to have been locked in this room, and there was also some suggestion that they were being blockaded by academic staff from the University of Sydney, is also appalling. So this university needs to leave no stone unturned in investigating what happened. There are important policies against vilification, bullying, harassment. But I also ask, have any criminal acts been committed here? Was the police called in? And why, if they weren't, why not? I mean, this just is just extreme, and I cannot understand how the university is tolerating this sort of behaviour. Mark Scott has some very, very big questions to answer on this.
Yeah, it's shocking judgment. I mean, imagine having visiting senior university representatives. They're being bombarded by the pro-Palestinian activists, these radical extremists, and thinking it's a good idea to lock them in the same room with guards standing outside. It's just shocking.
Look, it's absolutely appalling, really and we do need full answers. It's just shocking. Yeah. And frankly, Sydney University is one of the worst. It's got to do a much better job at managing the sort of safety attacks we are seeing against Jewish students and academics.
The universities are the coalface.
And you have to add, Sharri, Yeah, and you have to add, congratulations, that's two big stories you've broken this week. You have to add that universities should understand this space much better than other sections of our community, you would think. You would think they would have empathy for their guests, for relations between people of different countries, specifically, obviously, with the issues that exist in the world around us at the moment. So to have had no oversight, to have taken none of that into consideration, and then have acted in what appears to be a very heavy-handed and almost draconian lacking in any compassion fashion, it beggars belief. There should be a full inquiry, and the university shouldn't be asked or told to do the inquiry. They should be putting their hand up and volunteering straight away to conduct their own thorough inquiry so that we can all get some answers, because that sort of thing just should never happen. It's a bad, bad look for Australia, full stop.
And you know what else? You know what else,
and Sharri,
Basil?
can I just add also, sorry to cut in.
No, go for it.
So can I just cut in? It also appears, and I'm not going to name this person, but I believe there was one prominent pro-Palestinian activist, an academic from Sydney University, who is leading the charge on this. It is about time that this university decided to sack some of these staff, because there's
Sarah,
one staff member in particular.
I've already named him. I showed his tweets on the program. That's the University of Sydney academic Nick Reamer, because he tweeted encouraging protesters to target the Tel Aviv University staff days before they were due to visit. So we've named him because he
it's time he went, honestly.
He's on Twitter as encouraging this protest.
He is bringing this university into disrepute, and it is time Mark Scott acted and got rid of him.
Yeah. All right, Basil Zempiel, Sarah.
And it brings all Australian universities into disrepute internationally. When this news travels, when more people hear about it, we want our universities to be safe havens for learning and discussion and thought-provoking ideas, but we also want to see some common sense from our learning centres. And don't forget, it's where we want a lot of our kids to go after they finish high school, and we want to know that when they get there, they're going to be looked after, they're going to be safe, and they're not going to be thrown into situations that can become very dangerous and uncomfortable.
I mean, and I think the safety is the key point. And gosh, if you were a Jewish Australian, would you be going to the University of Sydney and putting up with this environment? I don't think so.